The Cash PT Blueprint is for therapists who want to start, grow, or market a cash-based practice.
You are listening to EducationHackers.com, podcasting from Vancouver, Canada. Education Hackers highlights successful entrepreneurs with great online courses. And now, to introduce today's guest, is e-learning evangelist Steve Atwall.
Today we have Aaron-Lebauer on the show. Aaron-Lebauer, PT, DPT, LMBT, is a doctor of physical therapy and a licensed massage and bodywork therapist. He earned his Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from Elon University in 2008. Dr. Lebauer graduated from Duke University in 1996 with a BA in history and moved to San Francisco, where he studied massage therapy and health education at the National Holistic Institute. He has specialized in myofascial release since 2000, is an instructor with the John F. Barnes MFR seminars, and has recently developed continuing education seminars for health professionals in functional myofascial therapy. In 2005, Dr. Lebauer and his wife, Andrea, opened Lebauer Physical Therapy LLC, a 100% cash-based physical therapy practice in Greensboro, NC. Lebauer Physical Therapy is a holistic physical therapy practice specializing in myofascial release, manual physical therapy, massage therapy, and physical yoga instruction. Aaron enjoys sharing his experiences in private practice and helping other physical therapists create, grow, and market successful cash-based physical therapy practices via his blog. Aaron, wow, that's a mouthful. Healthy living is a big topic, and taking care of your body so you can live a healthier, longer life is so important in this day and age of fast foods and canned goods and mass production. How do you make sure you live a healthy life?
Steve, first off, thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be on your show. And, I live a healthy life by eating good, whole, nutrient-dense foods, exercising, 4 to 5 days a week. I practice yoga, I run, do some body weight exercises, create good relationships with people, and smile a lot.
That's so true. Actually having a good mental outlook on life and a positive outlook on life, laughing every day and smiling every day, I think that really helps. That's one of my things. That's one of my little shticks that I sort of naturally like to see if I can put a smile or a laugh on somebody's face every day. And it comes back and I get some enjoyment out of it too. So you like Popeye. I grew up with Popeye cartoons in the UK. It's funny, my favorite Indian food is saag, which is a spicy blend of spinach, herbs, ginger, garlic. Very tasty. Yeah. Something you have to try at least once, especially with the corn flour chapatis. Do you like spinach?
Yeah, of course I like spinach. I like kale better.
Yeah, I saw the Popeye cartoon on your profile, and thought, wow, that's cool. So what else do you like to eat? How do you keep physically fit other than yoga?
What I do is usually we eat, like dinner, we'll eat some kind of meat, chicken, steak, fish, usually with just some salt and pepper on it, a pile of kale and some sweet potatoes with salt and pepper and olive oil. And it's pretty plain and simple, but yet very filling. And that's the type of kind of food and nutrients we eat, is just pretty much good, whole, healthy food, fruits, vegetables, meat, some nuts, some almond nuts, cashews, seeds, all kinds of stuff. And that Popeye cartoon was about how Popeye, who eats his spinach, is super strong, and that Wimpy was the one just eating hamburgers from fast food, and he doesn't want to pay for them. And so that's kind of the joke there, is that we are what we eat, and if we eat good, whole, healthy foods and fruits and vegetables, they will be strong and healthy. And food is medicine. And outside of eating, it's about moving our bodies, and moving our bodies is what keeps our bodies healthy. So that I practice yoga a few days a week. I just finished a yoga class about an hour ago before this conversation, and lift some weights, go on walks, run, play with my kids, all kinds of physical activity. And one of the mistakes people make a lot of times, and this is coming from the physical therapist side of me, is that when they hurt, they feel like, oh, I better not do anything. I should stay at home or stay in bed or stay on the couch. And that's kind of the worst thing that we can do.
Yeah, I like to go for nice long 10-kilometer walks along the Fraser River here. a nice wooded area, so you get those nice negative ions and fresh air and so on. It really refreshes you and really makes you feel good just to get out there. And movement, I think movement is the key thing, is keep moving. Even if you do have an injury, you try to move a little bit, I guess. That's very important. I've heard that from a lot of people. So Before we get into your online course, I like to ask my guests, how do you relax when you're not working? How do you unwind? Do you have any hobbies?
I do. I'm big into vintage scooters, so Lambrettas and Vespas. I've got a few of them from the 60s. I've got a 1961 Lambretta, and I've got a 64 Lambretta, and I've got actually have a 63, which is a project Lambretta, and I have a 1969 Vespa. And so they take and require maintenance, and I like working with my hands, and so I'll go out to my garage and do some maintenance or work. And really it's about finding the scooter that needs to be mechanically refreshed and restored, and I've spent a lot of time in the last 10 years doing that.
Wow. So how many of these do you have?
I've got 3 that run and 1 that's a project, and I'm always in the market for another project.
Wow.
So, and then also I like to, I also shave and restore with straight razors. And so I'll find straight razors, like the secondhand stores or the antique stores, sometimes online, and clean them up, sharpen them, repin them. I've also restored some vintage brushes with new brush hairs for wet shaving, and it makes the process of shaving so much more enjoyable, and it's something else I can do with my hands. So those are really my hobbies. But on a day-to-day basis, what I like to do to unwind is get a bowl of popcorn and just, vegetate in front of an action flick, so.
Yeah, I love popcorn too. That's one of my comfort foods. So let's talk about your online course called Create Your Cash-Based Therapy Practice. Give us a bird's eye view of the course. What do you cover? Who is it for? And why should people be signing up for it?
The online course, I created it about 8 months ago, and it's called the Cash PT Blueprint. And the Cash PT Blueprint is for therapists who want to start, grow, or market a cash-based practice. And a cash-based practice is the term that we use in the therapy, like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy realm. That means as a practice, we're out of network, and we do not process insurance claims on behalf of our patients. So the patients come in and they pay for the service the same day they receive it. And then we give them a receipt and the information they need to file the claim themselves. And so that's what a cash-based practice is. And Cash PT is, cash-based physical therapy. That's the short, kind of almost like hashtag, if you will, for Twitter that we use to describe cash-based physical therapy.
So for those of our listeners who don't know, what do you mean by a therapy practice? What kind of therapy are we talking about? Physical therapy? Does it include Swedish massages?
No, yes and no. So in my physical therapy practice, I'm a massage therapist, and once a year, someone who is been a patient for a long time wants a Swedish massage from me. It's super rare. Physical therapy is mostly hands-on. My brand of physical therapy is hands-on physical therapy. So I'm doing joint movement, which is called joint mobilization, tissue movement, which is called tissue mobilization. And there can be some massage therapy techniques in there, but I don't use any creams, lotions, or oils, which is really what a massage therapy session is like. In physical therapy, a big difference between physical therapy and a massage therapy session is physical therapy is focused on a problem a patient is having, or pain or movement issue where they can't do something during their normal daily basis. And physical therapy is also more solution oriented. It's helping people find solutions to their issues, empowering them to take care of it themselves, and having a start and stop date. Whereas a massage therapy is more about an ongoing wellness type of service. And certainly as a massage therapist, I did help people solve their physical pains and issues, but it's more of a wellness service. This is also for like occupational therapy, speech language pathology, anyone who wants to do, even I have a chiropractor in the program who wants to provide a one-on-one service to patients and grow their practice in a way that it creates time freedom for their patients and for the therapist, and helps therapists in many different disciplines, although I'm a physical therapist, so I've focused it on physical therapists, to create freedom in their practice without the constraint of an insurance company telling us how we should treat, who we should treat, and when we should treat. I get to now make the decision based on my patient's needs and with my patient's cooperation and input.
Traditionally, anybody not happy with what treatments are being paid for by the insurance companies, because insurance companies, they have a big say in what they want to pay for and what they think you need with traditional practices. So they may say, oh, well, we're not going to pay for this. You don't really need this. I guess it's not really to get around that. It's more to supplement that, so that if something is not, being covered, then you can go to a private practice such as this, a cash-based practice. Yes
and no. And so, okay, let me explain it in a different way. In a traditional in-network practice, most people go and they see the physical therapist, and then they maybe spend 20, 30 minutes with the PT the first visit, and then subsequent visits, they might see the physical therapist for 15 minutes, and then a tech or an aide or an assistant or someone else the remainder of the time. I've had a lot of patients who get left alone during the other times because the PT has multiple patients an hour. Because in-network practices are contracted, and sometimes the contracted rate is so low that in order to stay afloat, they have to see multiple patients at a time. What that means is that patients end up going in 2 or 3 times a week. It takes them quite a bit of time to get through therapy because they're not always getting the highest quality or enough time. And so in a cash-based practice, it allows me to see one patient an hour for as long as I want. I typically see patients one patient an hour. It's about a 45-minute treatment, and my patients come in once a week between 3 to 5 visits, which is a lot less time than the traditional practices here in town. I'm also able to provide service that the traditional practices do not provide, which is a one-on-one treatment using my hands, myofascial release, trigger point therapy, and joint mobilization manipulation type of techniques. And patients really like being touched. They get a lot out of it. It also helps calm their nervous system. And it's something that they can't get at an in-network facility.
So they can still claim these treatments?
Yes, they can. It's just that I'm not in-network, which means that they may have a higher out-of-network deductible or an allowed amount, but the treatments in our practice can still be claimed for insurance purposes.
So your course is for anyone that's not happy with insurance companies dictating what treatments you or your clients need, what they're willing to pay for, anyone who doesn't know how to start a cash-based therapy practice, anyone wanted to get out of the traditional practice into a cash-based practice. Is that so?
And I would say the primary person who is coming to my course is someone that's already made that decision, yet they don't know how to do it, and they want some help or they need some inspiration on what it looks like. And there's a lot of things that I provide in my course that are already completed and done for you, so that it's like a shortcut to cash-based practice for therapists.
Now, before anyone takes this course, do they need to meet certain requirements, such as obtaining regulatory approval for setting up such a practice, having a certain level of education or certification?
No, not at all.
Wow. So anybody can set up a cash-based physical therapy practice?
Yes. I mean, you have to have a physical therapist, and you don't have to be the physical therapist. However, if you're going to hire a physical therapist, you need to find someone that's exceptional and someone that can provide an exceptional service to patients. Because if it's a standard service that's no different than in-network facility next door, people are going to choose the in-network facility next door because it's that much easier to get that level of service. So most of the people that are in the course are therapists themselves, and they're therapists that have some kind of exceptional service or passion for therapy and treating patients.
But do they have to have a certain level of education? I'm just thinking the people that are actually providing the service, don't they need to have a certain level of education and certification?
Yes. So anyone who's a physical therapist, in order to provide physical therapy, you need to be licensed in your state. And to get a license in the state, you have to have graduated from an accredited university program for physical therapy. And same goes for occupational therapy, speech therapy, massage therapy. You have to have a state license to practice and a license to touch patients.
Right.
Now, I don't require that people do that to take my course.
No. But anybody wanting to do that should realize that they do need to have either the right people with the right educational background and certification, or if they're doing it themselves, then they need to have that too.
Yes.
So the course includes over 6 modules divided into subsections with a total of how many hours of video?
I think there's about 6.5 hours of video just in the modules, plus there's a bonus module, and we've got an ongoing Q&A session that's a monthly Q&A for about an hour, and it's continually adding to the content of the course. And some of the things that I do in the Q&A is not just answer questions, but do little mini tutorials. So I've got a mini website overview that I've done for someone that will become part of the course in one of the modules. And I've got some other things planned, like showing people how I use QuickBooks based on questions from the participants in the course. And so I'll not just ask questions, but I can go in and do that. And then that just continues to add to the content and the length and the amount of time that's in there.
And you have additional downloads, resources, action guides, templates. Tell us a bit more about that.
So in the bonuses, what I've got are a couple ebooks that I've written. One of them is how to create a blog and website for your therapy practice. And the other one is a search engine optimization guide. It's basically how to get on the first page of Google. And it goes through some of the steps someone needs to take who's got a business with a website, how to get your practice and your business listed on Google. And then another one I have is called the Cash PT Toolkit. And the toolkit contains all the documents, administrative forms, documentation forms, Word files, PDFs, that I use to run my practice, and it's available for download and customization by anyone in the course. And those things are all for sale separately, but I have them packaged in the course as bonuses, along with a bonus lecture that I created called Building Value for Patients in Cash-Based Models.
Now, there must be some software that lets you manage your patients. Do you get into that as well?
I do. I get into that in in one of the modules on how I run my practice, and talk about how I manage my patients. But I still do a lot of my documentation, or all of my documentation, by paper. I don't use an electronic medical record like many healthcare professionals. Number one, it's not required. And number two, it's easier for me as a solo practitioner to keep it old school and use paper forms and file folders.
So let's take a look at some of the modules. You have 6 modules. And in module 1, you talk about the anatomy of a cash-based practice. This is where you discover how a successful cash-based physical therapy practice is run and what is possible for you in your practice. And you cover things like anatomy of my practice, my treatment room, the equipment in my office, what I use for documentation, who are my patients, how I market my practice. So what do you mean by the anatomy of my practice?
Well, that's kind of how my practice is set up. What does it look like? What are the nuts and bolts that make it run? Or the muscles and bones that make it move? And one of the things is that a lot of people know what they want to achieve, but they don't know how to get there. And if someone can see how I do it and how I've run it and how I've become successful, it can inspire them to create something similar themselves. It's like if you don't know that something's possible, it's much harder to get there. So if I can kind of show people how I run my practice and what the anatomy of my practice looks like, then they can take that and see what the end result can be like for themselves.
So I guess this is where you decide what services you're going to offer as well.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people and therapists that have specialties and know what they want to provide or what they can provide. But then once we start getting into creating a niche service in one of the other modules, then that's where they can kind of pull out some of that stuff. But I think it's about saying, hey, I know I can provide physical therapy, but how do I provide it on a low overhead, small scale when I've only been an employee in a hospital or a large multi-specialty type of practice?
Yeah, and there are so many different areas in physical therapy too. I mean, you could be treating people that have been in an accident, that have had a sports injury, or they're just at the point in their life when they're getting older and they've had some kind of misalignment. Maybe it's their back. A back is a big issue. So a lot of people have back problems. And it could be all kinds of things in terms of what you're offering in terms of your practice. So it's very important, I guess, to start off on the right foot and decide what you're going to offer. And I don't know if you can spread yourself too thin, or maybe you should you specialize, or should you be more, okay, I can offer all these services?
I think someone should specialize. And part of that is saying, if I just offer physical therapy, no one really knows what that is. But if I am the person that is the back pain specialist or the running specialist, I treat runners, or I create run programs or golf programs, then that targets a market. And then that market, those patients, I can identify with what I do. If I'm doing a performance type of service, or I'm treating a certain area or specialty of the body. There's some people that specialize in back pain or hip pain, and they might say, we're the sport and spine, or we are the back pain specialists in marketing their niche. But that doesn't mean that you can't treat that person's brother's uncle's sister who has a wrist issue. And a part of reaching those other populations is educating the current patient population about what we can do as physical therapy. And physical therapy is underutilized. And so a lot of people don't know what we can do to help them. And that's a big part of marketing our practice, as well as creating a successful practice, is specializing and educating people. Yeah,
I think that's really important as well. It's like anything.
Whether you're setting up a blog or whether you're setting up any kind of business or podcast, is knowing what you are good at and what you're going to specialize in. It's funny, I went to a specialist who was treating people for back issues, but I was sitting in the waiting room and I was listening to some of the people, and this woman came in, and she was an older woman, and she was rubbing her neck. And I started talking to her. I said, oh yeah, every time I come here, he sort of cracks my neck, fixes it up. And I went home and I read about that. And I thought, wow, some people have actually died from that. It's a very interesting area, the neck. If you don't do it right, people can actually die from that. So you have to be careful about what you're good at and what you can do. What's your take on aligning the neck and cracking the neck like that? It depends. Manipulation, it's what that is a crack, like when someone cracks your back or cracks your neck, that's called a manipulation. And what a manipulation is moving the joint space. And it can be done very safely. And likelihood, when you review the research, the people that have died from a cervical manipulation were already probably predisposed to that as an issue. So one of the things that people can die from a cervical manipulation is a dissection of one of the arteries that runs up in your neck. Now, let me just preface this by saying that our spine is super congruent, and it takes a lot of force to damage the spine. It's super thick. There's ligaments that are really strong. So likelihood is that people did not die from the manipulation. They probably, when you look at the research, already had a predisposition. So the symptom of having a vertebral artery that's dissected is neck pain. So there may be a lot of people who have already had that as a problem, and now they have pain and they go to the chiropractor or PT, and then that becomes a treatment. So they're already pre-selected. So when you look at it in general, the risk is so small, but yet it's been publicized by the media as this crazy thing. But the risk of a cervical manipulation is so small that a lot of times the benefits outweigh the risk. And it's one of those things that happens one in a couple million people. And when you do it safely, it's done in a way that you do not take the neck to end range in any one direction. There are 3 motions. There's forward and back, side to side, and rotation. And you combine those motions to get a manipulation. And a lot of times you can get a joint movement or joint motion without any force. And they shouldn't be very forceful, and it shouldn't be something that you feel uncomfortable with. And it's certainly not something that I think is a danger to the public.
Yeah, that's good to know. You shouldn't be doing anything like what you see in the movies, where somebody, twists somebody's neck and, okay, he's dead, right?
Yeah, and like The Exorcist.
Right.
But I think that, that's why you should go to a highly trained physical therapist, chiropractor, for any joint manipulation. I think it's something that's very safe, and unfortunately gets a bad publicity.
That's good to know. So module 2, you cover the Cash PT mindset, and you say that mindset is everything. You cover preparing for the cash-based therapy practice, and you talk about what are you worth? Direct access mindset, common misconceptions. What are the common misconceptions?
Some of the common misconceptions about cash-based physical therapy is that no one's going to pay for it, or that it only works in a big city. People think that only wealthy people can afford it. And those things just aren't really true. And they're proven because people are practicing with this model in areas that are not large cities, towns of 5,000 people, or with patients who are truck drivers and farmers and average working person, middle class America, low income America. This type of practice works where people value what we provide. And the big problem is, for years people feel like, I pay every month for my insurance. My insurance should cover this. I'm not going to pay for physical therapy. Well, what they're doing is they're valuing physical therapy the way that they experienced it when they went into a busy clinic, or maybe a physical therapy mill where there's 4 people an hour and they're paying $50 or $25 and they're not getting much out of it. And so this mindset module is going through a lot of those things with other people so that they can understand them. A lot of therapists in the course know those things, but they don't have the words for it. And then there's also that mindset where, as physical therapists, we haven't been valued at anything larger than our copay or the contracted rate. And so it's to help create a sense of value and worth for us as a profession when we're a healing profession. And a big part of what we want to do is help people feel better. And we'll almost to a fault give that away. And that's one of the problems with why we have such low contracts, is that we don't want to walk away from the contracts. So as in a cash-based practice, we don't have contracts. And it's a contract between myself and my patient, not between a third party like United Healthcare or Blue Cross Blue Shield.
So nobody's forcing you to continue working with that client. You can say, okay, we don't need to work together anymore.
Right. I can say to the client, let's do these 3 things. Let's meet, once a week for 3 or 4 weeks and check in. And if at the end of that time the client's feeling better, or I can see they're feeling better, we'll spread out the visits, or the client can say, you know what, I can do this on my own. We're good. Thank you very much. And then both of us are happy, versus the insurance company that says, you know what, we're only going to pay for 3 visits, or we're only going to pay for 5 visits, or we're only going to reimburse you, or our contracted rate is only $45, no matter what you do. So then I have to start practicing in a different way to maximize my revenue so that I can stay in business. And there's I think a lot of ethical issues with someone who is not involved in the care deciding on how I should practice. You're deciding whether a certain treatment isn't covered for this patient, when I'm the professional and I decide I should be the one that decides what my patients need.
Yeah, it seems a bit backwards.
Right.
The doctors, when you go to the doctor, they tell you what you need. They look at you, they talk to you, they find out what the issue is, and they prescribe something.
Right. But they also may be influenced by their reimbursement for certain procedures like injections or a certain medication, prescribing a certain medication because they were influenced by the reps from that company, or they get a certain, they're not necessarily getting kickbacks, but they're influenced by reimbursement issues as well. And just talking to patients doesn't pay, but we can usually solve a patient's issue by taking a really great history and changing behavior. But that doesn't constitute like a billable service a lot of times. It's just an evaluation versus an injection of a joint. Let's see if this injection works or not. Well, I might be getting $150 for that injection. And if the injection doesn't work, well, we know it was an inflammatory process, but I still got, some money for that procedure. And so it's incentivized to do more things to patients rather than getting patients better at the end of the episode of care.
Yeah, I look at the way doctors operate, and it reminds me of the old factories, the conveyor belt, get as many people or many products out the door as possible in the shortest amount of time. And you have double bookings, triple bookings sometimes where 2 or 3 people are booked at the same time,
right,
just in case anybody cancels. And when people don't cancel, that's when you get those long waits. So you get an hour wait, an hour and a half long wait. I waited at, doctor's offices for an hour and a half, and I had to go pick up my daughter. And I told the doctor, I said, I can't, the receptionist, I said, I can't wait. And they didn't seem to care. So, okay, make another appointment. And next time I went in, same thing. So the third time I went in and it happened, I actually waited. I went inside and I said, you guys may need to change your scheduling system. And all I got was, well, maybe you might want to go see another doctor. And I never went to that doctor again. And I ended up actually going to a naturopath and getting 20 minutes every time dedicated just to me. I had to pay a little bit more, but still, you get what you pay for, I guess.
Right. And that was worth it to you to do that.
Exactly. And when you see a doctor like that for maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes if you're lucky, they can't really decide or analyze the situation and decide what you really need. And like you said, a lot of times they're giving you something, and it's more like an experiment. Okay, let's try this. It doesn't work. Okay, let's try that. So it's not really the best way to do business and not the best way to treat people. You have a dedicated patient that you work with, and you have a set or client that you work with, and you have a set time for them and a schedule. You don't have to go through that process.
No, not at all. I see all my patients on the hour, and occasionally I'll be 5 or 10 minutes late. And I'm usually running over because the patient before me needed some extra time, but all of my patients get all of their time. And that's the thing, is that for anyone with a musculoskeletal problem, which is anyone who's in pain or has limited movement or motion, should see a physical therapist first. Because physical therapists can spend a lot more time with you and usually get you in within 1 or 2 days. And that's one of the things about my practice is if I have a patient who needs to come in, I can usually get them in and see them, and I get to spend 45 minutes with them. And we can figure out what's going on. And instead of them waiting 2 weeks to get in with their physician, waiting 20 minutes there, maybe only getting 15 minutes of time, and then being told, okay, let's go get you an MRI. And then they wait 4 or 5 days to 2 weeks to get in the MRI. And the MRI tells them some things that are normal but seem really scary. And then they get some medications and injections. And now it's been 4 weeks and they're still in pain, when people could go directly to a physical therapist and start having their pain and problems addressed within just a few days.
Well, this reminds me of when I was in Toronto. I was fixing up an old house. I was taking out these plaster walls and ceilings, and I took a bag. It was a heavy bag. I guess I didn't position myself properly and was taking it out to the front, and I pulled my back. Mm-hmm. And I went to the doctor at the time. Chiropractors weren't really in vogue. I went to the doctor. Well, he sent me to a specialist, and I went to the specialist, and they used all these pulley systems with weights and so on to try to fix my back up. And it must have taken a few months to really get back to, almost the way I was before.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've started seeing a chiropractor, and I might see a chiropractor once every 6 months or so. I mean, I started going to the gym. I was pushing a few 100 pounds on the decline leg press, which wasn't that great for the back.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, the back would get a little bit out of alignment. So I would see a chiropractor maybe once every 6 months or so. And it would only take 1 or 2 times to see the chiropractor. And I'd be back to almost what I was before, versus the traditional way of, okay, let's get you in this pulley system and these weights and so on. And that also helps too, but it takes a little bit longer. So I guess it really depends on seeing the right person for the right situation and the right thing that you need. Now, you also get into the Aaron-Lebauer's practice blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
You get into the nuts and bolts of running your practice, scheduling your patients, accepting payments, and so on. And you talk about how to choose your location, how to set your rates. How do you choose your location? Do you pick a prime corner location on a busy street somewhere?
No, not typically. And that's the thing, was with a cash-based practice, you're usually offering something that's exceptional of quality and value. So patients will most likely travel to you. So it doesn't need to be, along the beaten path in the highest or most affluent area, the highest traffic area, somewhere that's going to be more expensive per square foot. A practice can be somewhere that's less expensive per square foot, off the beaten path, and patients will happily come to see us where we are. And so that's a big part of choosing the location. Also in my practice, it's just me, so I don't have someone sitting out front. So I'm not necessarily looking for walk-in traffic or walk-by, drop-in patients, because there's no one there to greet them. And so a location can be chosen based on those parameters that maybe cost less per month, especially when starting out, so that a practice doesn't have to cost a ton of money to start. And that's one of the other myths that we talked about before, is that a private practice costs a lot of money, and we need to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans to start. And one of the ways that you can start a business, in a low overhead model, is to find a place to sublease or rent that costs, only a couple $100 a month versus, $3,000 a month with no income stream. Because when you start, you're starting from scratch a lot of times with maybe only a handful of people who want to come and see you, and you need to build up the cash flow before you start spending more money on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that takes us to some of the defensible documentation, such as HIPAA and Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have the right documentation when you're treating your clients. Now, you get into that as well in one of your modules. You also get into direct access marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So marketing is a big, big thing. What's worked best for you in terms of marketing?
The best thing is word of mouth. And the second best thing that I actually put effort into is using Google and Google services to market my practice.
Do you use the Google local services?
I do. And right now it's called Google My Business. Google My Business is what covers the Google Plus business page, Google Maps, and it puts your practice out onto Google services. And using that and doing that makes a huge difference, because that's what puts our business page on page 1 of the Google search. And a lot of times it's when the map results show up versus the organic search. And if you have a brick and mortar practice, you can certainly get up there pretty easily.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because you do want your business showing up on the map, on the Google Maps. So when you search in Google, it should show a location of where you are. Now, I'm just going to read one of the testimonials from one of your students. And it goes something like this. Aaron provides an invaluable service to the PT community all over the country. His insights on business and patient care have given me the wings I need to offer services to my patients that they can't get anywhere else. Thanks, Aaron. Keep the momentum going, and soon all PTs will be out of the trenches. That's by K Sharp PT. What are some of the big questions you get asked for your course?
I guess one of the big questions is, I have a part-time course, or I have a part-time practice, or my practice is going to be located within a gym. It doesn't look like yours, or I have a practice where I'm going to travel to patients. Is that covered in your membership program, in your blueprint? And it is, because one of the things that I've done is build this so that anyone can adapt any practice to it. And the principles of the mindset principles, the patient care principles, the marketing, those things are, and the compliance, those things are valuable and applicable to everyone, to every practice. And there's very little that's focused solely on just one model of practice.
Now, my listeners are people who are either just starting to create their first online course or trying to figure out ways to improve their existing course. So I'm going to ask you a few quick-fire questions to help answer these questions. What was the biggest mistake you made when you first started creating your online course?
That's a great question. I think the biggest mistake I made was not trusting myself that what I had was valuable, because I doubted that my idea and information was desirable. And so I didn't really invest right away in all the things I needed to create the course.
What was your workflow like when you created your course? How did you determine what to include, what not to include, and what to add as a bonus material?
Well, I had the opportunity to work with another physical therapist as kind of a mentor, and he helped me with that. And one of the big things he said was survey your audience. So I already had a blog and an audience, and so I surveyed them on their needs and their pain points. And so I got a lot of information from them about what I needed to include in the course doing that.
Awesome. How long did it take you to finish your course?
Well, so actually what I did was when I started, I did a pre-sale before I even built the course. I created the sales page and I did a 5-day sale to my list, and I sold a lot more than I actually thought I was going to sell. And so then once I sold them, I was like, well, I better get my course done. And I did it it took me about 2 months to get it done. I got it open and the first couple, the modules and the bonus ready for enrollment within about 3 or 4 weeks. But I wasn't doing this full time. I was seeing patients full time. It was a really busy period in my life of seeing 20, 26 patients a week, which is a lot of patients in my practice, plus things on the weekend. So if it was all I was doing, it could have been a couple weeks, but it took me about from Labor Day weekend to into November when it was complete.
So why did you decide to self-host as opposed to uploading your course to sites such as lynda.com or Udemy?
Because I already had a hosting plan for my other websites, and I wanted to maintain control of all the profits. And then the niche is very narrow. So I feel like most of the people who are interested in my niche are already coming to my website or already know about my website. And I didn't really need the exposure that Udemy or Lynda would have provided for me, but they also take a cut.
Now, you said that word of mouth is probably the best way that you've had to market your course. What are some of the other ways?
I use Twitter, LinkedIn, and I've got a public Facebook group called the Cash PT Nation. And those are places where a lot of physical therapists get together to discuss problems in our industry, and people have issues in their practice and they're looking for help in some of the discussion board type areas. And just by helping people with their problems, people come to look at my profile page and they come to the blog or they follow the blog and they see the information about the course.
And how do you support your course members? Do you have a private forum or Facebook group?
We do. I've got a private Facebook group as well as a monthly Q&A and pretty much unlimited email correspondence. People will contact me privately and I'll help them out. If they're in the course, they basically get what they need out of me through those avenues. Nice.
Looking back, what was the one tool, software or hardware that you absolutely needed to create your online course?
Optimized Press and Optimized Member. Without those, I couldn't have created my course unless I went through someone else like Lynda or Udemy. But I could have done it without buying a microphone or a camera because it's built into the laptop. Facebook was already there, but it's really the structure to create the membership website that I needed. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned the ATR 2100 mic.
Right. I used the ATR 2100 mic and I used Camtasia. And like I said, my mistake was I did the first module with iMovie and editing it on iMovie, and that was really challenging. And Camtasia makes it so much easier. And then the other thing that's really indispensable was a mentor. So I had a a friend and mentor, John Schumacher, who I think that's how I found you, Steve. And he helped me and guide me through creating the course. And he's the one that told me, he said, sell it before you make it and see if there's a market for your course. And so that was excellent advice, and that was invaluable.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people use the same technique and making sure that there is a market before you go full steam ahead. Well, Aaron, we have come to the end of the show. I would love to keep talking with you, and I know you have a ton of things you can teach us all. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing such valuable insights and advice. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you. Where can people reach you online?
You can find me online at lebauerconsulting.com. That's LEBAUER consulting.com, or on Twitter at LebauerPT. That's LEB as in boy, AUER, PT like physical therapy. Those are the best places to find me online.
Thanks for listening to Education Hackers. Check out the show notes and click the Love It button at educationhackers.com to send us some iTunes love. Until next time.